Hello everyone, welcome back to another informative episode of Agri-Words and Phrases. If you recall, in the last episode we spoke about photosynthesis and we did mention C3, C4 and CAM photosynthesis. In this episode we are going to talk about C3 photosynthesis. Now what is C3 photosynthesis and what are some examples of C3 plants? About 85% of the plant population conducts C3 photosynthesis. And some examples of C3 plants would be your common tomato, sweet pepper, cabbage, legumes, and the list goes on. As I said, about 85% of the plant population conducts C3 photosynthesis. Now let us establish a few basic points before we get into the details of the information. First of all, CO2 diffuses into the plant leaf from the atmosphere. And there's something called the Calvin cycle that occurs within C3 photosynthesis. And the Calvin cycle operates within the palisade mesophyll cells of the leaf. Please remember that. Also, the stoma or the stomata on the plant leaf normally open and it closes. It opens and closes, open and close. Now, why does it do this? Why does the guard cell on the stoma open and close the stoma? They do this in order to regulate the amount of water that goes out and the amount of gas that comes in. So while the stoma is open, it is releasing water in the atmosphere through transpiration, and while that is happening, it is also taking in carbon dioxide. Now, what causes the stoma to close? Most commonly, high temperatures. When the temperature is high and there is excessive heat, the stoma will close in order to reduce the amount of water that it loses. So it's kind of cutting down, as it doesn't want to lose too much of its water to the atmosphere. That would basically cause severe stress and ultimately kill the plant. So the stoma will close. Now within C3 photosynthesis, these C3 plants, they don't like conditions that are too hot, because if the conditions are too hot, it will force the stoma or the stomata to close, which will cause a reduction in the amount of carbon dioxide that can get in. And you know that carbon dioxide is what is assimilated or converted into the necessary sugars that the plant need. So what this is saying is that photosynthesis would be reduced if the stoma is closed in high heat, and thus reducing plant growth and development, and you don't want that. So these C3 plants, they do not like too much of a high temperature, too much of a high heat. They more like the conditions where they can be able to open their stomata during the day. Now let us move over to a very beautiful diagram that I created to illustrate the C3 pathway or C3 photosynthesis. Now, as you can see, this is the beautiful illustration or diagram that I have created. Now, I am sure you might be wondering, what is this? Now, let us talk about the components of this diagram. First of all, we have the atmosphere here, which is very evident, you know, the clouds and the blue sky. And this is where the oxygen gas and the carbon dioxide gas is. Next, we have the stoma. So as you can see, this arrow here is pointing to the stoma. This is the opening or the pathway into the leaf that the gas will diffuse into the leaf. And this rectangular area that I am outlining with this laser is basically the palisade mesophyll cell. And the palisade mesophyll cell, as I said before, is located within the plant leaf. And within the palisade mesophyll cell, the Calvin cycle operates. Please remember that. Within a C3 plant or C3 photosynthesis, the Calvin cycle operates within the palisade mesophyll cells. Now, let us move on to the flow of this diagram. First of all, gas or carbon dioxide is going to diffuse into the leaf through the stomata from the atmosphere. As I said, this is the atmosphere. Just follow the laser. This is the atmosphere. And the carbon dioxide gas diffuses into the leaf through the stomata. But before it reaches, the aim of the carbon dioxide is to reach the Calvin cycle, because the Calvin cycle is where the life is. This is where the CO2 is going to be assimilated or converted into glucose or the necessary sugars to support plant growth and development. So the CO2 is definitely making its way into the Calvin cycle, which is, as I said, operates in the palisade mesophyll cell. Now, before it reaches the Calvin cycle, it goes through a process known as carboxylation. And carboxylation is basically where carbon dioxide binds to the enzyme Rubisco. As you can see here, Rubisco plus CO2. It binds to the enzyme Rubisco, and Rubisco stands for ribulose biphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. That is what Rubisco stands for. So when CO2 combines with the enzyme Rubisco, it forms a 5-carbon sugar known as RUBP. As you can see here, RUBP stands for ribulose biphosphate. So that is the first thing that happens. Now when it is converted to RUBP, therefore when the Rubisco enzyme binds with CO2 and it is converted to the 5-carbon sugar RUBP, then RUBP enters the Calvin cycle. Right? And when it enters the Calvin cycle as RUBP, it is further converted to a 3-carbon molecule. A 3-carbon molecule. Why am I stressing 3-carbon molecule? Because this is how the pathway got its name. Remember, the pathway is C3 pathway or C3 photosynthesis. This is how this type of photosynthesis gets its name. C3 photosynthesis, 3-carbon molecule. And the 3-carbon molecule is phosphoglycerate. This is where C3 photosynthesis got its name. Now, the phosphoglycerate, which is the 3-carbon molecule, is further converted to 2-glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. And this is further converted to glucose, and the glucose is what constitutes the final phase of the Calvin cycle. Because remember, the aim of the Calvin cycle is to really convert CO2 into the necessary glucose that the plants need to support growth and development. So here, the glucose is achieved, and this now will be translocated to the different parts of a plant to maintain and to sustain growth and development. So as you can see, this is what really happens in the C3 pathway or the C3 photosynthesis. And remember, I said that 3-carbon molecule, which is phosphoglycerate, this is how the name C3 photosynthesis came about. But what I want to also point out to you is that within the atmosphere it also has oxygen. And if you look right here, we have a process known as oxygenation. So we have carboxylation and we have oxygenation. Now, if the enzyme Rubisco binds to oxygen instead of CO2, you will have something known as photorespiration happening. But we are not going to tackle photorespiration now. We'll discuss that in a future video. But what you need to know is that photorespiration is something that commonly happens within C3 plants. And to be more specific, about 33% of the time, Rubisco will bind with oxygen. The plant benefits more when Rubisco binds with CO2 because it is converted into the necessary sugars that is needed for plant growth and development. But you will understand more about photorespiration in a future video. I hope this illustration or this diagram was informative. I hope you understand what C3 photosynthesis or the C3 pathway is. If you have any questions or any comments, please state them in the comment section, and please remember to subscribe to my channel. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again in another video. Hello, now that you're at the end, if this video was beneficial to you, please consider subscribing. To subscribe to my channel, please click the red subscribe button and then click the bell icon beside it so that you will be notified whenever I publish a new video. Thank you.